Namaste. Welcome to day 14 of the 1 month-long Oneness Festival on Adi Shankara, organized by Advaita Academy. Today we have two live talks. The first talk is by Bharat Gupji on Saundarya Lahari, and the second is by Sri Venugopalan Shankaran on the contributions of Shankara to Bharat. The second talk is in Tamil. Please stay back for both the talks. You can post your questions on the chat box. The first speaker, I'll introduce the first speaker, Bharat Gupt. He's a former associate professor in English at the University of Delhi. He is an classist, theater theorist, sitar and Sood Bahar player, musicologist, cultural analyst, and newspaper columnist. Really speaking, a Renaissance man. Presently, he's a trustee and executive member at Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, New Delhi. Gupji has given various talks on various aspects of Indian culture, and his videos can be found on his YouTube channel, Bharat Gupt. Today, Gupji will be sharing on the great devotional text, Saundarya Lahari. Welcome to the talk, Gupji, and please continue.
Namaskar, everybody. Everybody is welcome. Varnanam artha sanghanam, rasanam chandasam api, mangalanam cha karatarau, vande vani vinayakau. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So, friends, we share a few things today about one of the most powerful and beautiful text called Saundarya Lahari, which means the waves of beauty, one wave after another. And these are not the waves of a river. These are the waves of a sea which is the cosmos itself, because this is the vibration of the Shakti. Now, this text, Saundarya Lahari, was composed by common consensus. It is believed that it was composed by none other than the Shankaracharya himself. Some people say there was somebody else many centuries later who composed these 100 verses. Now, to my mind, that question of authorship is not so important. What is most important is that this text in tradition has become part of the sadhana of Advaita Darshana, particularly in South India. And the significance of this text, that it is a text of Tantra, and the Tantric tradition of Advaita is represented by a whole system of thought in the South particularly, and that tradition is called Samayachar. This Samayachar is also called the right-hand road or the Dakshina Marga, in contrast to the Vam Marga. The Vam Marga, which uses a different method of sadhana. So the Samayachar is also sometimes called the Vedic Parampara, the Parampara which worships Shakti and Kundalini through a particular method of entering with the Kundalini. Now, there are two aspects to this text. One is the text as a stotra. Stotra, which is the praise of Devi, which begins with the first verse, Shivaha Shaktya Yukto Yadi Bhavati Shaktaha Prabhavitum न चेदेवं देवो न खलु कुशलः स्पन्दितुमपि अतस्त्वामाराध्यां हरिहर विरञ्चादिभिरपि प्रणन्तुं स्तोतुं वा कथमप्यकृत पुण्यः प्रभवति. So it begins with this verse and it ends with another verse, which is the 100th verse. Now, these 100 verses can be divided into two. In most editions that are prevalent, and I use a edition which was published many years ago from University of Hyderabad with the Lakshmidhar Vyakhya. Lakshmidhar was a Vyakhyakar of 14th century. It seems most scholars think that it was the 14th century. And he wrote a very beautiful and profound explanation about this. So that text has, in 100 verses, the first 41 verses describing the Devi as Kundalini. So in other words, it is the Avyakta Devi. That is Devi in the Nirguna. Nirguna in the sense that it is not something which can be seen with the eyes or with the senses, but can be only experienced after one has gone beyond the first four preliminaries of the Yoga Marga, that is Asana, Pranayam, Yam Niyam, Asana, Pranayam, the first four steps. And then when one has become, one has turned inwards. So when one has entered the stage of Pratyahara, that is, one is not looking upon the world through one's senses, but one has turned inside. And it is that inward journey which begins once the Guru has initiated into it. And it is from that point that this journey would be supervised by the Guru. And it can be undertaken only if you have a Samartha Guru, if you have a Siddha Guru who can take you onto this journey. So the Saundarya Lahari talks about Kundalini, and along with Kundalini, it also talks about the visualization of Devi in terms of Shri Chakra, because Shri Chakra was used in the Samayachar as a major, a very important, what I should say, equipment or a method, a very important method. It was used, the Shri Chakra, to further your sadhana. So the sadhak would also do some practices according to the prescribed method before the Shri Chakra. So in the first 42 verses, we have a description of the Shri Chakra as well, and then of the various stages of Kundalini. Now, in the scope of a small talk like this, we can't go deeply into the various aspects that have been dealt with in this Saundarya Lahari regarding the nature of Kundalini, the power of Kundalini, and the Shri Chakra. So it is sufficient to say that the first to the 42nd verse, they talk about Devi in these terms. But from 42 till the end, we have what may be called the Vyakta Roop of Devi. You see, the Vyakta Roop means that which is to be seen through the senses. You, of course, do a dhyan or a concentration on it, but you also see the Devi as Saguna, Devi as a divine woman, Devi as Shiva, Devi as the consort of Shiva, Devi as Shakti, and Devi as the supreme power under which Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, all three operate. So Devi then becomes the supreme. Ataswamaradhyam harihara viranjadi bhirapihi. So, right in the beginning, the poet says that you are worshipped by Brahma, you are worshipped by Vishnu, you are worshipped by Mahesh. All three, the Trinity, bows before you. You are above them. You are beyond them, and you are the sole cause of the universe. So this way, the Shakta text established the sole supremacy of Shakti or Devi as Shakti. Then from 42nd verse onwards, you have what I said, the Vyakta Rupa. That is the physical description of the Devi. Now, you see, in the Indian tradition, in literature, that is in Kavya, we have a tradition in which we describe the beauty of the Nayika, the beauty of the heroine, from her head to her toenail. Nakhashikha, or actually it is called Nakhashikha, but it is Shikha Nakha Vardan. That is, we begin with the highest point on her head and we come down to the toenail. And we describe everything and every part of her body and the beauty of it. And it is done without any hesitation about any part. So this Nakshik Varnan is a literary device. But when the Nakshik Varnan of the Devi is done, then it is not just physical beauty, but more than physical beauty, it is significance of each physical aspect of Devi, which is deeply spiritual, which is cosmic, and which is to be realized through sadhana by the sadhak. So this is how the Vyakta Rupa, the physical form, is meant to lead, to make you aware to the internal sadhana. So in actual practice, the later 42 verses are what may be called the sthula sadhana or the preliminary sadhana, in which the beauty of the Devi is expressed and the sadhak concentrates upon that. The first verse in that is called Gataira Manikyatvam Gaganamanibhis Sandra Ghatitam Kiritam Te Haimam Himagiri Sute Kirtayatiyaha Sanideyachaya Shurana Shabalam Chandra Shakalam Dhanur Shaunasiram Kimedati Nandibandhanati Thishanam. So this gives a description of her mukut, her headgear, and then also of the beauty of the rays and the light which is reflected in her kirit. And from this point onwards, he comes down to the hair, then to the face, the beauty of the face. Tanotu kshemam na tavavadana saundarya lahari. So it is from this verse that the title of the whole poem is taken. Tanotu kshemam na. That is, may you provide us well-being, kshemam. How? Through the saundarya lahari of your face, vadana, and so forth. So the poet then comes to the face, and then from the face he would come to the neck, and then from the neck down, and even on the face he would talk about different parts of the face, and then he will go right down to the toenail, as I said. So what is the significance of this strategy which the poet has adopted, in which he is talking about the avyakta and the vyakta? So avyakta is only for experience internally. That is one who has awakened the kundalini, the one who is experiencing the inner chakra bhedan, or going through rising of the kundalini from Mooladhara, the lowest of the chakra, right up to Sahasrara, the final. So all those experiences are in a very philosophic and what may be called gudha or rahasyamaya manner described in the first 40 verses. So this is the avyakta description of the Devi. And then, as I said, it is the physical beauty of the Devi. Now, in the Indian tradition, it is very clear that the worship of a Brahma is always in both the form, in the form of Nirguna and in the form of Saguna. So there is Nirguna Sakar and then there is Saguna Sakar. Both are a matter of experience. So in this poem, in the first 42 verses, it is the Nirguna Sakar. Now the Nirguna Sakar is experienced by the sadhak through the Kundalini. It is not something which anybody else can experience or anybody else can know about the experience of the sadhak or the individual. So it is the internal matter. It is the internal sadhana. And then the external sadhana, which is done through a yantra also and through the repetition or the dhyana of the Devi, the shape of the Devi, the beauty of the Devi. Now, this whole tactic of using the inner experience and the experience through the senses to attune it to the divinity in all its ramifications, in all its beauty, in all its diversity, is a very, very typical Indian method. You see, India specializes in it. India specializes in accepting the beauty of the form of divinity, let alone forbidding the divinity from having a form or an idol or an image or a murti or a vigraha or a pratima, let alone forbidding it. It celebrates the pratima because the pratima is also Saguna Brahma. It is not inferior. It is not that the Pratima or the Murti or the Vigraha or the shape or the Dhyana of the Devi is only for leading us to the Nirguna. You see, this is a mistake we very often commit. We always say that, look, this is a preliminary sadhana. It is meant to take you to the higher Nirguna Brahma, to the formless God, to the monotheistic God. Now, this is not the truth of any Indian philosophic system. In the Indian philosophic system, in the tradition of Upanishads, if Sarvam Idam Khalu Brahma, if it is said that all that is Brahma, then even the material, the phenomenal, is also Brahma. And so the Vyakta, the phenomenal, the Murti, the Vigraha, the beauty is also Brahma. Hence, a text like Saundarya Lahari very extensively talks about both the aspect. And it gives both the aspect, the avyakta and the vyakta, equally balanced. As a matter of fact, there are 10 more verses for the vyakta, or the physical beauty of the Devi. So, what is to be understood is that both the sadhanas are to be done concurrently. It is not as if one sadhana is the beginner sadhana and the other is the higher sadhana. No, both the sadhanas are constant. Both the sadhanas are there all the time. And both are done together. Now, in the context of Saundarya Lahari, let me give you a bit of information about sadhana. That other than the sadhana of Kundalini, which was done under the guidance of a adept guru, of a realized master, the sadhana of the dhyan of the Devi was done by the sadhak in a particular manner. And that was with the use of yantra and with the use of mantra. Now, in this case, the text has chosen about 60 verses which describe the beauty of the Devi, and I read a couple of them out to you as mantra. So to think of the shape of the Devi, the beauty of the Devi, the beauty of any part of her body, is to think and to repeat it in your mind and to do a dhyan on it is a sadhana. And this was very often done in the following manner, that a yantra was made, that is, on a piece of colored paper or cloth or a silver sheet or a golden sheet. A yantra was drawn, a prescribed yantra, and then the corresponding verse to that yantra was recited 1,000 times or 2,000 times in a day, and that was the sadhana of the dhyan of the Devi, by repeating that mantra 1,000 or 2,000 times. So this was the Vahya Achar, or this was the Vyakta Puja, or this was the pursuit of sadhana done with your senses which are not turned inside as they are when you are experiencing the rise of the Kundalini. So the Saundarya Lahari talks about realization of being one with the Devi, of knowing the Devi, of experiencing the supreme reality of the Devi through both these methods. And that is why it is such a unique text. And that is why I think it is very appropriate to accept the fact that it was composed by none other than Shankaracharya himself. Because Shankaracharya has never put away the method of or the road of bhakti. So it is accepting bhakti, it is accepting surrender into the Gyan Marg that Saundarya Lahari makes such an important text. And that is why it is a unique text. It is unique not only in its literary qualities, because in terms of literary value, it's a marvelous text. Very, very lovely things are said in this, and the language is very beautiful. The use of Sanskrit is marvelous in this, and it is very musical. But it is also useful to talk about both kind of sadhanas. One last thing that I would like to say is that it is composed in the Shikharani Chanda. Now, Shikharani is one of the very popular meters in Sanskrit, and it's very popular all over India. People sing it in a tune, very often in a tune, which goes something like this. Kada kali mata kathaya kalitala takarasam pibeyam vidyarthi tava charana nirani jana jalam. So this is the Shikharani Chanda, and it is sung in this tune. Atastwamaradhyam harihara viranchadi bhirapi. This is the third line of the first stanza. So it is the same chanda which is used for all 100 verses, and it is a text which uses Jnana Marga, Bhakti Marga, Yoga Marga, Kundalini Marga, or you can even say Raja Yoga Marga, and sadhaks of various capabilities and inclinations can use the Saundarya Lahari for their spiritual benefit. So I would like to, am I audible, please?
Yeah, you are audible. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, you're
so
audible.
I would like to take questions now.
Okay. If you want to
Yeah.
share more also, you can share. Others, we can take questions.
Yeah, we take questions now, and I will, use rest of the time in giving answer to your questions. But make your questions very brief.
Okay. One of the questions I wanted to ask is, you said, of course, that it's a lot about meditation and the Kundalini and Sri Chakra. Is there any? Are there any particular verses that highlight the Advaita Vedanta aspect in these verses?
Now look, when you say Advaita Siddhanta, then Advaita Siddhanta, I mean, of the later Vedanta, as you find in Shankaracharya, where he has made the very simple nirupan that the Jeev is none other than Brahma. And it is only because of Maya that the Jeev is separated from the Brahma. Now, that doctrine is not taken up here. Now, you will ask the question, why is it not taken up? You see, if it is by Shankaracharya, then why does Shankaracharya not refer to his, his typical doctrine, or his real thing? Like, why does he nowhere use the paradigm of the serpent and the rope? Now, the answer to that would be that this is a Shakta text.
Okay.
Shakti means worship of Shakti, which means that in this, devotion to the Devi is the first and the last thing. Because here you cannot have the doctrine of Brahma. Brahmavad nahi ho sakta yahan. Brahmavad, that that Jagat is mithya and Brahma is satya. That cannot be taught here or expounded here, because this is a Shakta text, and according to the Shakta system, this universe is a constant creation of the Shakti and presence of the Shakti, and it is as real as the Shakti itself. So we have to understand this philosophic difference.
Okay.
That is why that very standard doctrine cannot be propounded here.
Okay, very good. One question says that Ravi Shankar ji says it's an excellent presentation, Gupji.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on one or two poetic expressions of Adi Shankara that you liked in Saundarya Lahari?
Oh, you mean the poetic?
In terms of the verses, yeah, any particular
any verses?
Expressions.
Yeah.
Any expressions that caught your eye or you were impressed?
One of my favorite verses is Kada Kale Mataha Kathaya Kalitalaktakarasam Pibeyam Vidyarthi Tava Charan Nirane Janajalam Prakritya Mukanamapi Cha Kavita Karanatayaha Kada Dhatti Vani Mukha Kamal Tambul Rasatam. Now, this is a very devotional verse. He says, Kada Kale Mataha Kathaya. Mother, just tell me, when will this happen? Kada Kale Mataha Kathaya Kalita Laktakarasam Pibeyam Vidyarthi. That I am your Vidyarthi. When will I drink? What will I drink? Pibeyam Vidyarthi Tava Charana Nirane Janajalam. When will I drink the water which flows after your feet has been washed? So when will I get to drink your charanamrita? Then he compares it. Kada kale mataha kathaya kalitalaktakarasam pibeyam vidyarthi tava charana nirne janajalam prakritya mukanam. Those who cannot even utter a word, those who are dumb, prakritya mukanam apicha kavita karanataya, they can recite poetry. They acquire the power of reciting poetry, although they may be born as deaf and dumb or dumb. Kada dhatte vani mukha kamal tambul rasatam. And when will I get this special power of Saraswati? And what is this Saraswati? This Saraswati is like the beetle which is in your mouth. See? So
It's wonderful.
it is the beauty of it is the beauty of the power of Devi's Tambula, rasa, which will give rasa of poetry on whom Devi has showered her kripa or benediction. So this is Kada Kali Mata. Now, uh, almost every verse in this text is beautiful like this, and it's also very philosophical. You see, when he talks about the physicality of the Devi, the physical beauty of any part of the Devi, the Devi is there not just as a body, but she is a symbol for a metaphysical reality also. So if you describe the hair, then you describe the expanse of the hair. If you describe her waist or her hips, then the hips are like the expanse of this universe itself. So it is a text in which symbolism dominates. And it is a profound symbolism. It's a symbolism which describes a particular doctrine, the Shakta doctrine of the Samayachar. And it is also a symbolism which is beautiful in terms of literary descriptions. So the whole poem is written this way.
Actually, one of the participants wanted to know which verse this is so that they can look up in the text, the verse that you shared.
Well, I'll have to search for it. It is towards the end, Kada Kale Mataha.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, I think somebody has helped us. It's verse 98. Muthulakshmi ji, thank you very much for telling us. 98.
It could be. It could be. I don't think it is 98, but maybe in her edition it is. But
Okay.
it is towards the end, I know.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I can take some more examples, but then it would take a lot of time. Maybe we can take one or two other questions.
Yeah, we have one more question. Yogendra Kumar ji asks, why is it necessary for the author to emphasize both Nirgun and Saguna forms of meditation? Why can't one or the other be the path for meditation? He's asking. I mean, why is the author giving both according to
Well, you see, in the Indian tradition, the constant presence of both is described in all our major texts. And there is a philosophic reason for it. You see, unlike the Abrahamic traditions, which insist upon only nirgun or monotheism or something beyond the world, the whole Indian doctrine is sarvamidam khalu Brahma, that everything is Brahma. So if everything is Brahma, then this phenomenal world is also Brahma. And this is emphasized constantly by thousands and thousands of poets in North, in East, in West, and in South. In South, you know, what is that famous song? Jagadodharana Adisitala Yasoda. So what is Purandara Das talking? He's saying that this Nirguna Brahma is playing in the lap of Yashoda. This Brahma is there as physically as a child, and it is no different. So this whole acceptance of the Supreme as something human, as something avatarit, as something which we can touch, as something we can approach. So similarly, in our sadhana, in coming close to the Devi, we can use the yantra, we can use the mantra, we can use the dhyana, and we can use the Kundalini also. And even those who practice the Kundalini sadhana, they also do the Saguna sadhana. It's not that only one is done. The tradition has been that way. And those who have done that sadhana have always talked about the beauty of this world as well. In our times, like Shri Aurobindo, he talked about the supramental being, but the supramental being and the Shakti had to come, for him, was descent of the supramental, that everything becomes beautiful, that the world is also made beautiful. Yeah.
Well, Gupji, we have one more question, which is Sri Lalita Brahmandakara Vritti. Please comment on this view.
On what? Please repeat.
I think they want to ask about this. Sri Lalita is according to this person, Sri Lalita is a Brahmandakara Vritti, and they just wanted your comments on this view.
You see, Sri Lalita has been described in different traditions in very different ways. And it is talked in certain other texts. It's not part of the Saundarya Lahari, but Lalita, as what is Lalit and what are the different kalas? There are innumerable descriptions in various different texts. And in the north also, Lalita in the context of Krishna and Radha becomes a Sakhi of Radha. So all these philosophic uses of the Lalita, or the beautiful, or the one who only watches, the Sakshya Bhav, they have been used very differently. But in Saundarya Lahari, there is no very specific doctrine of Lalit or Sri Lalita. Yeah.
So largely it is the Sri Chakra and the Kundalini and the physical form of the goddess that is described in the Saundarya Lahari.
Yes. So this is a combination of the whole sadhana of the Shri sadhana of the Samaya, what was called the Samayachar. And this was the right hand sadhana as different from the left hand sadhana or the Vam Marga. So
there's one question which I wanted to ask is, can people just read up this text on their own, or do we need any guidance from a guru to even read this text?
No. You should always read the text, enjoy the beauty. It's available in translations. There are different vyakhyas. I think the Shankaracharya of Kanchi, the senior one, had written a very beautiful commentary on it, a very profound and extensive commentary. And one should study and read it as much, but as possible to understand the whole doctrine. But as is always said, that when you embark upon some kind of a yogic sadhana, then it is at that point that you need a teacher. That should not be done just by reading books.
That's true.
Yeah, just like, to take a very simple example, you cannot learn music by reading books. You need a music teacher, you need a music guru, you need somebody who sings or plays an instrument to teach you. So similarly with yoga, that this is. Now I see a question here, that is it true that Adi Shankara received the first 41 verses? It has disappeared. What is the whole question?
The question is it true that Adi Shankara received the first 41 verses from Lord Shiva in Kailash?
Well, these are different traditions. I would say that he must have received all the 100 verses. Why leave out the rest of the verses? You see? I mean, it is true that these 41 verses, as I told you, they are about Kundalini. They are about the experience of Kundalini. And it is from the 42nd verse, from the Kirita, from um, the headgear of Mukuta of Devi, that the Vyakta sadhana or her beauty begins. So I, you see, there are different traditions which have some kind of a meaning behind them. And perhaps they have more of a meaning in a given sampradaya. So one should respect that sampradaya and understand that.
That's true.
But I would say that the whole poem must have been received by Shankaracharya from Shiva.
That's true. From the Karunakara Shiva, definitely. Is there anything else you would like to add as we come to the end of the session? And is there anything else you want to say as closing comments?
Well, I would say that there are different persons who have sung this Saundarya Lahari. So if you can find some good recitations of it, then try to listen to them, play them, because just listening to the beauty, or rather listening to the text, is something wonderful. And it is something that protects you. It certainly protects you. Yeah. That's it.
Yes, thank you so much, Gupji. As you shared in your verse, when will we get to drink this water which is used for washing the goddess's feet? We managed to get a few sprinkles today, thanks to you. And I hope we are blessed to get more and more of this, the knowledge of this wonderful verse. We thank you very much for sharing this knowledge with us. And we hope we can meet up with you at some other point, at some other time also.